Hey everyone, welcome to the Coding Zoo. This is your first time joining. My name is Shane. This is our HTML building blocks series. We're on lesson number 16. In our last lesson, we covered how to use the new HTML5 element progress. In this lesson, we're going to cover how to use the HTML5 element meter. So very similar to each other, but used in different contexts. Hey, if that interests you, hey, stick around. We're going to jump right in. Right, hey, let's go ahead and get started. Before I do, I just wanted to mention, if you haven't checked out the website, thecodingzoo.com, hey, Alexa is talking to me. Alexa, stop playing.
Sorry, I don't know that.
I know you don't know that. Alexa, stop. Don't you just love Alexa? Amazon Alexa. Anyway, okay, what was I saying? All right, so hey, before we get started, if you haven't checked it out, check out thecodingzoo.com. It's our website. We have all the lessons listed there. We also have study notes for each video, and eventually we'll have quiz programs out there for each video. So it's a good place to check out all the videos that we have. We have 3 or 4 series. So let's go ahead and jump in. I've prepared code for this lesson to help us get through it quicker. The code I prepared has an implementation of 3 meter elements. In those 3 meter elements, I set the different attributes pretty much the same. Let's look at the first one. So I have a meter element. I put an ID of pressure, name of pressure, and I put a min and a max. So the min is, of course, the minimum measurement you're taking, and the max is the maximum measurement you're taking. You'll notice also that I set the attribute low and high. So I want you to think about, when you're using the meter, you're creating 3 ranges of numbers. So the first range would be 0, your min, and this would be 0 in this case, your min, and the top of that range would be your low, or your low minus 1. So 0 to 11 would be your first range, right? So I've set a high of 30 and a max of 80. So your middle range, so you have your low range, your middle range would be between 12 and your high, between your low and your high, 29 and 12. And then your top range over here, right over here, would be from your high mark to your maximum, which would be, in this case, 30 to 80. And I'll show you this on the screen if it doesn't make sense, so you can get a better idea of what I'm doing. I created these 3 meters. They all have the same settings. There's another attribute here called optimum. So this is the optimum value you're trying to get to in your measurement. So let's say you're measuring oil pressure on a car, right? So the optimum value would be 20 psi. Let's say that's 15 to 20 psi. Well, you'll see here I've got it set to optimum of 20. So that's a good thing. It should be the color of green. The meter has 3 colors. Of course, red and green are 2 of those colors. I believe the other one is yellow, maybe orange. I think yellow. If my optimum is 20 and my value is 10, well, that's in the range of 0 to 12. That's not my optimum range. My optimum range falls in the middle range this time, right? So we said the middle range this time was between my low and my high, which is 12 to 29. So 20 is in the middle of that. So my middle range is my optimum range. My lower range and higher range are suboptimal. Okay, so let's check that out real quick. There we go. So if you look at the 3 meters here, you'll see 2 are yellow and 1 is green. So the first one has a value less than 11, and it's suboptimal. So the optimal range was in the middle because I set the optimal value to 20, which is in the middle of my 0 to 80, right? It's in those different ranges I talked about. My optimal is in the middle. My optimal is set to green, which would be this one right here. So this second one has a value of, I believe it's in the middle. What is it? Let's see. Yeah, 20. It's in the middle range, so the middle range is green. If you're on the left or if you're right next to the optimal range, which in this case would be left or right, you're going to get set to yellow. There is no third range, there is no poor range, because your optimal range is in the middle. So you have an optimal range in the middle, and you have one beside it, and you have one beside it. So therefore, there's no poor range. There's an optimal range and a suboptimal and a suboptimal. That's why you have a yellow, a green, and a yellow. First one is set to less than 11. That's why it's yellow. My next one is set to 20, which is in the optimal range here. And my following one after that is set to, I believe, around 75, somewhere in there. Where's it set to? 70, right? So it's also in suboptimal range, so it's yellow. That kind of confused me at first. I was expecting yellow, green, and red. The idea is wherever your optimal range is, the one next to it is suboptimal. It's not poor, which would be red. Now, how would we see one that's red? Well, let's throw another example down. I'm going to go ahead and add and cut and paste this to add another example, save a little bit of time. I'm going to clean this up a little bit so you can read it better, in case you want to actually code while I code. Feel free to stop the video and play around with this element. If you don't have time for that, of course, you can always download the code from the Coding Zoo website. Clean that up. Okay, I've got my same elements as before. I've got the same values. Now I'm going to change the optimum value up. So the optimal value in the first example was in the middle, which means the ones right next to it were suboptimal. So the middle would be orange and the other two would be yellow. Middle would be green and the other two would be yellow. I'm going to make it to where the optimal value is the one on the right. So it's 0 to 80 measurement. I'm going to set it to 70. So 70, 70, and 70. We'll save it. Click refresh. There we go. The first one is below 0 to 11. Let me change this text so it'll make more sense. So 0 to 11 is no longer right next to the middle one, which is optimal, because the optimal is on the right. So this is actually a poor, I'm going to call it poor or bad range. And this is now a suboptimal range. And this is the optimal range. Save it. There we go. All right. So my optimal is around the value of 70. Anything between 0 and 11 is 2 levels away. So it's going to be red. It's poor. Anything in the middle range, it's going to be closer. So it's suboptimal. And if you're in that far right range, in this case, it's 70, it's going to be green. There are your 3 colors. So that was a little confusing at first when I started out with the middle one, because I had green and yellow and I was expecting red somewhere. Well, if the optimal range is in the middle, then your 2 other ranges are going to be green. If the optimal range is on your left, then the one on the far right is going to be the poor and the red color. If the optimal range is on the right, the one on the far left is going to be your poor. Kind of makes sense. Let's go ahead and do another example where the red is on the right side here. Cut and paste it again. And let's change this to optimal. And let's change this to poor. And how would I make the left side optimal? Well, I would change the optimal value to something that falls between the min and the low value that I've set. I'm going to change optimal to 5. 5 and 5. Save it. Click refresh. And there we go. This one falls below 11, so it's considered optimal. This one's in the middle, so it's yellow. It's not quite red. It's suboptimal. And this one falls around 70. It's far from the optimal, and you'll notice it's red. That's how you use the meter bar. Again, it's used to measure something like pressure, or not to measure like whether something's finished or not. That would be your progress bar. But just to measure like the pressure of something, something you can meter, right? The word meter. Hey, so that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the lesson. The 3 different ranges was a little confusing to me at first, but hopefully you get it. If not, leave me a question below and I'll get back to you, explain it further. I hope this was very helpful to you. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, click like. If not, click dislike. And if you haven't subscribed yet, click subscribe and click that bell icon for notifications. I hope to see you again in the future. We'll see you next time. Bye.